Good morning, colleagues and friends. I will start with a story. You might be familiar with this story. It's a story about a small country, very few natural resources, small population, lived next to bigger neighbors, was part of a federation, broke off from the federation, then they pursued economic reforms, did very well, established itself as a gateway between the East and the West, grew rapidly, and known as the tiger economy of the region. And today the country is touted for low corruption, high efficiency, one of the most digitized country of the world. You all know which country that is, right? It's Estonia. You mean you're thinking of somewhere else? I sat opposite the Estonian president, lady, at the St. Gallen Symposium earlier this year. And so first question I asked her is about their digital identity, because we too are doing setting up a digital identity system. And I asked her how you do it, how you get your whole population to accept it. While they are a small country, they have quite a big rural areas. And so she said, it's important when we roll out the system, it's not really about the technology, but about the implementation, about helping people see the benefit. And so, in the rural villages, they set up help centers so that the elderly, the less educated are brought on board the national ID system. You just think about it. You replace Estonian villages with HDB heartland, you replace help centers with RC centers. This sounds exactly something like Singapore will do, right? The only difference is they did it 10 years ago, or in fact, 2 decades ago. It is not just the small, nimble countries, they are moving quickly in this innovation game. India, a country 1.1 billion or 1.2 billion now, is on the move. They have rolled out a national biometric identification system called Aadhaar. It is the world's largest biometric ID system today, and one of the most sophisticated. It is not without its controversy. I think there is a challenge in court, constitutionally, but notwithstanding, a country of this size is on the move. And you look at China, it is moving at even faster pace, at a breakneck pace. Go to any Chinese city, you look at the infrastructure that has gone up. E-payment, while we are still arguing in Singapore, is ubiquitous in China. You've seen the slide just now. Even beggars along the street has QR code asking you for change. They are now testing facial recognition system for financial services, including ATM withdrawal. Imagine no card, just your face, and you can withdraw money. So those with twins, be careful. Apparently it's smart enough. Every layer of the country's bureaucracy is putting a concerted effort, putting in their own effort to translate One Belt, One Road into reality. And it's not a pipe dream. You see it in terms of steel and concrete connections and infrastructure. Recently, China, Britain, France, they announced ahead of the Frankfurt Motor Show that in time, they will phase out vehicles powered by fossil fuels. The purpose? To differentiate themselves, differentiate their motor industry from the rest of the world. And why are countries doing this? It's not very different from why companies are doing this. Apple, it used to produce computers, manufacture computers. It has transformed itself totally into a smartphone provider and reinvented itself totally. Disney is no longer just theme parks, no longer just Mickey Mouse, it's now an entertainment conglomerate with very impressive franchise, Star Wars, Avengers, Marvel Comics. Amazon, Alibaba, they have moved from online to now offline. This is the competition in the real world and in the commercial world, and the Darwinian nature of global competition. But countries, we run on a different logic. We can't close down, we don't go bankrupt per se, we don't retrench, we can't retrench our citizens. But countries can be broken, countries can be impoverished, and it can bring severe hardship to people. So countries too need to constantly rethink, reinvent themselves to stay relevant, to gain that foothold in that international division of labor. And in this era of technological disruption, this is the economic challenge of our time. And how can we meet this challenge? The Committee of the Future Economy recommended 7 mutually reinforcing strategies. If we synthesize them, I think they boil down to 3 ideas. First, we need to innovate, build up our capabilities, our skills internally in Singapore. Secondly, translate those capabilities and skills into products and services that people want. And third, take them overseas to the rest of the world. So 3 key words: innovation, enterprise, internationalization. We have decades of success bringing in FDI, foreign direct investments, into Singapore from MNCs. That will continue to be important. But the new Singapore, we must combine innovation, enterprise, internationalization into a new engine of growth to create jobs, generate income, raise our welfare. It is something that we have to learn to do a lot better. Recently, I was at a polytechnic. I don't know if polytechnic principals are here. I went to one polytechnic, and the principal showed me some of the projects that students have done all these years. One was a project did 10 over years ago. And the principal very proudly told me, and showed me the project. I gave it away, did I? And showed me the project, and the idea was a good one. It's essentially a shared taxi service project done by the students of that polytechnic, I think more than 10 years ago. And the principal very proudly told me, look, the idea of Uber and shared taxis started in this poly. So that was good. We are indeed capable of big ideas, disruptive ideas, but you know the difference is this. Uber was not born in Singapore or executed here. It started in San Francisco by a couple of youngsters who are not happy that they couldn't get a taxi. Yeah. Why didn't it happen here? I can't really say. Maybe the students was looking towards other careers, professional careers. Maybe they are not hungry enough. Maybe our environment just not conducive for them to try out the ideas. But we must understand this. Ideas in itself is very good, but they don't generate the jobs, the income that we want, or the enterprise that we want to create. It is execution. It is getting it done that create those value. However, I think things are changing. We are creating homegrown champions. You saw some of them, like Hope Technic, like Carousel. I will count Lazada, Razer, Ninja Van. PayPal, it has set up its international headquarters in Singapore, and here it is testing its fintech solutions, state of the art. Amazon has launched a 2-hour grocery delivery service in Singapore. It doesn't really work within 2 hours. Those who have tried will know that. But that's really besides the point. The point is, Singapore is such a small market. It does not make sense for them to set up such a big outfit here. But they are doing so because they are testing their AI-driven warehousing and logistic capability in Singapore. F1 show as well. Kudos to MTI for negotiating a better deal for us this time, extended by 4 years. And not just that, Singapore is now not just the only night city race in the F1 circuit, it is also the test bed for F1. F1 intends to use IoT, intends to use virtual reality technology in Singapore to better entertain the world, those who are watching the race. Like us, many countries are trying to create an environment conducive for innovation, conducive for experimentation. They have the advantage. What are their advantages? First, they have bigger markets. So naturally, enterprise want to set up there to tap on the bigger markets. Second, for many countries, they actually don't regulate everything so tightly. That means there's a lot more white space for ideas to flourish, sometimes even crazy ideas to flourish. In some ways, that is how Alipay, how WeChat Pay flourished in China through a trial and error process because e-payment wasn't really regulated in China. Singapore we cannot compete with these countries head on because our position is diagonally opposite from them. They are big, not so well regulated. We are small, very well regulated, very tightly regulated. Let me assure all of you who are senior civil servants here today, no matter how you feel your agency is friendly to business and facilitative of innovation, it is just not the same as these bigger countries. We are not that kind of economy, and we don't pretend that we are that kind of economy. So how can we compete? Is to offer impeccable inter-agency and cross-agency coordination to make things happen. And yes, we need a whole of government approach, something you have heard about. But this is a concept that, let's be honest with ourselves, it can be misunderstood. Whole of government effort means every agency chipping in to contribute towards a larger cause, to make something that is impossible, possible. It is not every agency having your own vested interest, having a veto right, and making the possible impossible. You get that logic, right? It is no different from how we have attracted FDI over the decades. That was central to EDB's mission, but it has always been a whole of government effort, in the true sense, where there was a central objective to bring in FDI, create jobs, every agency contributing towards it, applying your minds, reviewing your rules and regulations with that key goal in mind. And we can make ourselves attractive to innovation and enterprise too, by calling on the cooperative spirit of the entire public service towards a much larger national goal. So in this pursuit of innovation, what is stopping us from being the best we can be? The main obstacle, I say, is ourselves. We are all public officers, all of us here, in charge of regulations and policies. You ask ourselves honestly, how much time do you spend enforcing rules, coming up with new rules, regulate something more tightly, as opposed to reviewing rules, maybe reassess the pros and cons, the risk and the return, apply the rules differently, exercise more judgment, so that more new activities, innovative activities can happen. Weigh the time you did the former versus the latter. How often do you say no to a new activity, as opposed to saying maybe, yes, we can try it out, even within a sandbox? I think the latter is not much. In my dialogues with public service officers, often in CSC during your milestone courses, I ask this question as well. And most will come back to me and saying, not much. Too much day-to-day running, too much day-to-day operating, just enforcing and tightening rules, as opposed to facilitating new activities. And I ask them, why? Why is that so? Why aren't you spending more time on innovation, reviewing rules, opening up the spaces? And these are usually the reasons. First reason, no time. No time. But innovation is like exercise, you make time. We never have time for exercise, but when you make time and you have done it, you realize that you have done something good. And over time, it becomes a habit. And so we must make innovation a core responsibility of every senior public officer. And over time, this core responsibility becomes a habit. The second reason is no budget, no manpower. Yeah. But innovation is really not about having a big budget, having more manpower, having a lot of time. On the contrary, the best ideas have always sprouted because of some desperate need, because we are so short of resources, because we are so short of budget. Estonia, they implemented e-government, not because they have lots of budget to spare, but because they have no budget and no resources to run a big paper-based bureaucracy. So they have no choice but to go into national digital identity. Singapore too, we have world-class water technology, but that's because we are so short of water. Before, now, we continue to face that challenge, and so we broke out of that constraint. The third reason that public officers often tell me is, my boss don't support me. Maybe that's true. Maybe that even applies to the minister. But remember, we are all public service officers of certain seniority here. We are all bosses here. And you can empower yourself, and you can empower yourself to do something. It may be a side logic that when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But equally, when you fail to start, you start to fail. So don't wait for that grand plan. Don't wait for that boss to tell you this is the vision, this is the big grand plan, and start doing. Start something today. So I say make a start, no matter how small. Innovation is not grand plans, it's not about KPIs, it's not about technology or big budget, ample time, ample resources. The main obstacle is really ourselves, our organization, all our entrenched processes, bureaucracy, a culture of being afraid. Afraid to fail because all these years we have succeeded. Afraid to hunger because we have been quite full. I spoke about the concept of we think big, start small, act fast at the admin service dinner earlier this year. This approach is particularly useful, I feel, in reviewing rules, in encouraging innovation. And since that speech, I make time and I did the following. At any one point, and some of you are the victims of what I've done. Since that time, I maintain a series of 10 rules review on my table, and I have it written in my iPhone. Rules review that I feel will make them more supportive of innovation and enterprise. So when one review is completed, I close the case and I'll start another one and victimize somebody else. I set a timeline. PSD has been most helpful to me. MTI, PEP, Secretariat has also been very helpful to me to support me on this effort. So each time they facilitated, and I set a timeline for them of 30 days per review. If 30 days, nothing is done, or there's an impasse, or I feel there's an impasse, I'll meet the senior officials who are in charge of those rules. And then we will weigh the pros and cons, we'll have a robust discussion, we'll make a judgment at the end of a meeting, and then we resolve it. And usually these meetings last no more than 30 minutes. So let me tell you some of the things that we have done over the past few months. One of the issues I looked at was procurement. Some of you may have that experience before. You have an event, small office event, you know this very good caterer, you want to get the caterer, good price. Somehow your finance department say cannot. You have an event, you know this nice freelancer who can take very good photographs, and you want to get that freelancer, and it's very cheap, you know. Finance department say cannot. Yeah. We all go through that. You are receiving a foreign guest, and you heard that MOE, one of our art schools, some student has created a very nice local art piece, you know, at very reasonable price. You want to procure that, and instead of giving gold-plated orchid for once, you want to give this nice art piece. You all got gold-plated orchids, huh? Finance say cannot, because must call quotation, or there's this long-term 3-year contract we signed with somebody, you must buy from that fella. Right. So I was slightly disturbed by that. So I asked MOF, what is the rule? And as it turned out, MOF rules allow you to exercise that flexibility for small purchases, so long as it is value for money. And that threshold is $5,000. So I asked MOF, please disseminate this more widely amongst our public officers. Today, when I go around asking senior officers, there tend to be greater awareness that this flexibility is actually provided for. And I do see more officers, more departments, more ministries exercising it. So if you don't know about it, please go back and talk to your, you are the boss, right? So set the rules, exercise some judgment, and exercise those flexibility. It is very useful for startups, very useful for freelancers to be able to approach a government department, get a job, and then have a reference job that they can then go out to the market and say, I've done this job for a certain ministry, you know, and it will help them penetrate into the larger market. So very useful for startups, for entrepreneurs, for freelancers. So to support this effort further, MOF, they will raise this small value purchase limit from $5,000 to $6,000. With effect from year 2020. No, I bluff. It's with effect from next month, okay? Well, next month. For larger projects, there are many procurement techniques involved. This procurement requires quite sophisticated capabilities. And today, those sophisticated capabilities reside in certain agencies, particularly such as JTC, such as DSTA and MINDEF. But we need to build up these capabilities across the board. So DSTA will partner the Singapore University of Social Sciences, SUSS, to launch a certificate program in procurement. And MOF will promote this program to those of us who have to deal with procurement. It's a capability that is very worthwhile building up. Yeah. Within DSTA alone, there are almost 30 procurement techniques. Every different project has a different way of procurement. They still encourage competition, ensure value for money, but the way you approach procurement is different across projects. It's a deep discipline, and we're going to raise that discipline across the board. Another project I looked at recently, oh, I like this one. It was the promotional banners along Orchard Road and the Civic District. Today, if you are an event organizer and you want to put out banners and promote your event along Orchard Road and Civic District, you have to work with 5 government agencies, each one who looks after a specific segment of the area. But the thing is, each of these agencies, for their own good reason, has slightly different requirements on the dimensions of the banner and on the design of the banner. So to the organizer, it's not the most business friendly. But when I raised this issue with the agencies, the PEP at MTIs sprung into action. I thank them very much for that. We got the agencies together quickly, and within my 30 days limit, they have come to a conclusion. They have streamlined the process. So from 1st of January 2018, LTA will be the one-stop shop. LTA, thank you very much. I don't know where is LTA, but good job. Good job. No, the thing about this is this. When it comes to innovation, sometimes we must have an agency that's prepared to stick their neck out. And the good thing is this. All 5 agencies have now standardized their design. Wonderful. Earlier in April, this project is slightly bigger, and I talked about it earlier in April during the admin service dinner. I talked about a multi-agency effort to experiment with floating solar panels on a fairly large scale at Teng Ye Reservoir. We need to develop our capacity to generate renewable energy because more MNCs are demanding it, because many MNCs are striving and aiming to be zero or low emission companies. And Singapore, because we are going to have a carbon tax, many MNCs are actually motivated to do it faster in Singapore. We have limited renewable generation capacity. We can't do wind. The wind is not strong here. We don't have thermal, thank goodness, because it means you have volcanoes. So what's realistic for Singapore is solar. But yet we don't have those large tracts of land. So therefore, putting solar panels on reservoirs is a fairly viable and attractive option. There were concerns expressed by various agencies, but to their credit, in the past few months, in our discussion, we have untied all those knots. PUB, since last week, they have called for tenders for environmental and engineering studies for 2 reservoirs that they are interested in. MINDEF is helping to expedite similar feasibility studies for Serimbun and 2 other reservoirs in the west where they conduct military training. Yeah. EDB is exploring the possibility of getting private commercial participation in setting up solar panels, generating renewables, and selling it to MNCs. So I hope that very soon our reservoirs will be a source of supply for not just clean water, but also clean energy. Another project that we looked at was the use of technology for hotel guests to do self-check-in. It's quite a long-standing project. The technology is actually very mature. By year end, iPhone X will have facial recognition capability. T4, Changi Terminal 4, that's opening end of this month, some of you have seen it, will use facial recognition for checking in for airlines. So, but there are various reasons why hotels have not adopted technology for check-in. But what we want to ensure is that it is not our own rules that trip it up. So STB will be working with the hotel industry to come up with suitable prototypes. MHA is supporting the effort by creating a sandbox, a little white space, to enable hotels to test bed such technologies. You know, I have no magic wand to make innovation happen. The projects I mentioned above, they happen partly I make time to drill into the details and look into and weigh the pros and cons. But more importantly, every of these projects that make progress was because there was a small group of senior officials, some of you seated here, who worked with me, weigh the pros and cons, and make those judgments, make those decisions, and implement the change. It requires hard work. It requires our persistence to change to trump the intransigence against change. It requires political leaders and public servants to work hand in hand. Innovation in the public service, I think, is not so much about this sudden burst of genius or some flashes of divine intervention. I think it's a systemic, long-term, hard slog across the board. I'm doing my part, and I hope you will do your part too. Let me go to the conclusion. The enterprise of government, it goes beyond any commercial enterprise. When the public service innovates, we are not looking at raising venture cap money. We are not seeking a listing of our agency. We innovate to improve lives, overcome our constraints, serve our citizens better, shape our destiny as a country. This work we do together is the ultimate social and economic enterprise. That is why beyond a good career, joining the public service is a matter of pride, of honor, and a calling. We bear a weighty duty together, and we cannot succeed without a new league of extraordinary public service officers, all 2,300 of you gathered here today. As directors, there's so much you can do within your individual spheres of influence. If you don't feel you have one, ask your boss for one, or create one for yourself. You are senior officers. But with each of your individual effort, you can make a difference to a project, to a company, even to a certain segment of an industry. But collectively, with all 2,300 of you today, you can change culture and mindsets. You can make a difference to the future of Singapore. The race is on, the stakes are high. I don't think there's time for excuses. I don't think there's time to lose. Now, let us all get started. Thank you very much.